One of the most common things I hear horse owners say is, I think my horse might be lame, but I'm not sure. And honestly, that uncertainty is exactly why lameness goes undetected sometimes, and why lameness so often gets missed till it's a much bigger problem. Today, I want to break down what exactly lameness looks like, the subtle signs people miss, and when it's time to stop second guessing yourself and call the vet. Hey, it's Adri Witherhorse. I'm a licensed vet tech and horse owner. I see this question come up constantly, especially with horses that are only slightly off. Lameness isn't always dramatic, and it doesn't always mean your horse is three-legged lame. So let's talk about what lameness actually is. Lameness simply means a horse is moving differently because of discomfort or pain. It doesn't always mean an obvious injury, and it doesn't always come from the leg you think it does. Lameness can be subtle, it can be obvious. It can be intermittent, meaning it's not a consistent lameness. It comes and goes. The lameness can worsen on one rein, going one direction, as opposed to the other direction. Lameness can be worse on certain footing. But keep in mind when assessing if your horse is lame or not, horses are animals of prey, so they are really good at hiding their lameness. And they hide pain extremely well. It's very important for their survival not to be obviously hurt or injured because that makes them a target. A lot of horse owners are looking for a big obvious sign. But by the time you see that big obvious sign, the problem has likely been there for a while. Let's talk about the earliest signs of lameness that a lot of people miss. Early sign number 1, a change in movement. One of the earliest signs is not a limp, but a change in how the horse is moving. This can look like a horse with shorter strides, a horse that is pushing less from behind, a horse that has an uneven rhythm, a horse that is reluctant to move forward. So if your horse just doesn't feel quite the same, that matters. Another early sign of lameness that a lot of horse people miss is the head bob. The head bob often indicates front end lameness. This looks like the horse's head shooting upward when the sore leg hits the ground. The head goes down on the sound leg. Now, a lot of people get this backwards, so I always think of this easy mantra to remember. A horse lifts their head to protect the sore leg. So remember, bobbing of the head is indicative of front end lameness, and so if the head is up, look down at the ground, see what leg your horse is standing on, and notice what leg the horse shifts its weight to when the head goes down. Another early sign of lameness that a lot of horse people miss is a hip hike or a hip drop. This is indicative of a hind end lameness. I have found that a hind end lameness is harder to see. It's harder to detect. It's usually more subtle than a head bob, but often you'll see one hip going higher, one side of the horse's hind end is dropping more, and a lot of times you'll see uneven tail movement. People often mistake hind end lameness with being stiff, being lazy, or even just being crooked. A lot of times lameness, if it's subtle, will worsen when you are riding your horse on a circle. In fact, many subtle signs of lameness is only detectable on a circle. This is because the inside legs are bearing more weight, and small circles exaggerate asymmetry. So if your horse looks fine whilst going straight, but off while on a circle, or off on one rein, that's important information. Another sign that horse owners miss when their horse is displaying the early signs of lameness is behavioral changes. Some of the earliest signs of lameness are actually behavioral. For example, your horse may become resistant under the saddle. Your horse may start refusing jumps. They may start bucking or swishing their tail. Some horses will not pick up a certain lead. Some horses just stand differently in the stall. But please keep in mind, when assessing a horse for lameness, pain often shows up as attitude first. Let's talk about some common sources of lameness. When people think of lameness, they often think, oh, leg injury. But that's only part of the picture. There are, of course, very commonly, hoof-related issues. A hoof-related issue could be something like an abscess, bruising, a bad case of thrush, or white line disease. And if it's a sudden, severe case of lameness, very often it is hoof-related. Another cause of lameness is soft tissue or joint injuries. This includes tendons, ligaments, arthritis, or just joint inflammation. Lameness can even pop up when there is pain elsewhere in the horse's body. It doesn't even have to be a limb or a hoof. For example, if a horse is experiencing back pain, sometimes that will result in them being lame. That's one reason why getting your saddle fitted is so important, because saddle fit issues often end in lameness if they are left unresolved. Neck or SI discomfort, also known as sacroiliac discomfort, can also lead to lameness. If your horse has sacroiliac discomfort, you're going to be looking at the joints that connects the spine to the horse's pelvis. Keep in mind, the sore spot that you see isn't always where the problem originated. So how do you know when to wait it out and see how your horse does versus calling the vet? You might consider simply monitoring your horse if it's a very mild change, there is no heat or swelling, the horse appears to be comfortable at rest, or if the lameness improves with light movement. So monitoring doesn't mean we're ignoring the problem. It just means that you're watching your horse closely. Now let's talk about when you definitely should be calling your vet. You should definitely call your vet if a lameness is obvious or worsening. If there is heat, swelling, or you can feel a digital pulse on your horse, call the vet. If you see sudden severe lameness or a sudden change in attitude or appetite, call your vet. And of course, when in doubt, if nothing else for peace of mind, call the vet. If you're debating whether you should call your vet, you should probably call your vet. So let's talk about what not to do if your horse is lame. There are a few common mistakes I see over and over, such as riding through it. When a horse is painful, that's a sign that something is wrong, and you should never ask your horse to ride through lameness. Another common mistake is assuming that your horse is just stiff. If you assume your horse is just stiff, think about it. Did you warm up your horse before you got on? Did you thoroughly groom your horse before you got on? When you ran your hands over your horse and inspected them, did anything look off? Did they show reluctance to move forward? Did they flinch when you went over certain parts of their body? Don't assume it's just stiffness. Often, stiffness is just the first sign of an underlying lameness issue. Another common mistake is waiting far too long before you intervene. I've seen people wait as long as weeks for a lameness to go away, and then they find out that their horse has a suspensory the whole time. Yeah, that's a really bad scenario. So don't wait too long before you seek care. If you're monitoring to see if it gets better, it should get better within 24 to 48 hours. Another mistake I see is horse owners treating without knowing the cause. If you don't know what's really going on, you might just be treating a symptom and not getting to the underlying cause. So remember, early intervention is almost always cheaper, and it definitely has a better outcome. The biggest thing I want you to take away from this video is this. You don't need to be 100% sure your horse is lame to take it seriously. Trust patterns because you know your horse better than anyone. If this video helped you understand lameness a little bit better, consider subscribing. I make videos like this to help horse owners feel more confident and less overwhelmed. I'm teaching you what I wish someone had taught me. And I am trying to make the videos that I wish were available when I went through these situations. Let me know in the comments, how did you realize your horse was lame? And what symptoms were they displaying at the time to tip you off? And please note, this video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for veterinary care. Always consult your veterinarian if you're concerned. It's Adri with her horse. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.